I want to touch on something that my guest, Rachel Fabbi, said on episode 112 of Enhancing Human Experience the other day that I think is so awesome, and it's so important. And if you haven't seen that episode, don't worry, because I pulled a little clip, actually 2 clips. Both of them are a minute long, and I put them up on my Instagram and Facebook at gmarkphillips on Instagram or at gmarkphillipsfan on Facebook. And you can watch those clips. What she said was that she sees in her therapy, counseling, and her as being a therapist, is that a lot of the times people are coming to her with a common problem of feeling disconnected. And she said they feel disconnected from themselves, from God, from other people, just a disconnected sense, which is ironic because we're very connected in the world right now. But it's a digital connection, and it's somewhat not an authentic connection in many ways. And she talked about this in the episode. I thought it was really fascinating. It reminded me of something that I thought about years ago, and that this is like this idea of when we don't feel supported by the universe, by the consciousness that is what life is, we don't feel supported by God or source or the universe, then we really feel cut off, and that really sucks. Because in that type of situation, we don't have anything to fall back on. We have no foundation. We're like floating off in space without any connection to what we really are. And that is so counterintuitive to how life really is. Plants are connected to the earth, and they have that source flowing through them, and they use that to revitalize themselves and grow and become, better and nurture themselves. But human beings, because of our mind, we can cut ourselves off thinking that we're all alone in this game, and we're not all alone in this game. I find it to be one of the biggest problems, just like she mentioned, is when we feel disconnected from the source. I call God source because it resonates with me a little bit better. You may call God, you may call universal intelligence, divine intelligence, whatever you want to call it. But when we feel disconnected from that, we miss out on the support that we have, the spiritual support. I do believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience, as Pierre Desjardins talked about. As spiritual beings, we have a foundation of that source energy behind us. And until we get that right, nothing can be right in our lives. We can't have relationships or friendships in the best way. We can't do our best work in the world. We can't do what we came here to do, right? Create consciously and be these conscious creators that we are meant to be if we don't have that channel to the source connected or plugged in, right? On the other side of that is, if we're not plugged into the source, if we're not plugged into God, if we don't have that channel opened up, then ideas that are right for us won't come through, and we'll go through life doing stuff that isn't the best thing for us to do. And that'll cause us to feel more disconnected and more out of tune and more out of alignment. You see how this builds? If we don't feel connected, we act in ways that are way off base, way out of alignment for who we really are and what we really are here to do. If we don't feel connected, we're going to establish poor relationships, dysfunctional relationships. We're going to do dysfunctional things. We're going to behave in dysfunctional ways. All of these things become exacerbated by not being connected to who we really are. And however you want to do that, right? If you want to do it through meditation or prayer type practice, or speaking to your higher self, your wisdom within inside of you, or God, or tuning into your subconscious and what wants to come through you, the ideas and inspiration that want to come through you. If you really be calm and quiet the mind a little bit, we can know what we should do. We really can know what we should do. Now, one thing I want to say, and this is from my own experience, and you probably experienced in your own self, be careful, because once you open up that box and there's all sorts of goodies in there, you can't close it. Once you open the lid, you can't close it, because you're going to be you may be inspired to do things that are radically different than what you're doing now. You may be inspired to take a radically different turn in your life and take an entirely different path. That's what happens when human beings live a lot of their lives being disconnected and then finally reconnect, and they wake up and they're like, well, I've been on a path that isn't truly the best path for me. Haven't been doing things that I should be doing, haven't been living the life that I should be living, right? When we're disconnected, you don't know that. And so be careful when you plug yourself back into this source or God and connect yourself again, because you may get impulses and ideas that are really very different than what you've been doing. And then of course you've got to ask yourself, do I want to do this? Tough challenge, tough question. I don't take that lightly, but just know that that's one thing that can happen. But again, if you missed that episode, I put these little clips up on my Instagram page, and I really find it to be really awesome. It's just a great way to help ourselves do what we came here to do in the world. And again, that connection is so important. And I feel the foundational, the base level connection is the connection with Source. And everything else will fall into place once we reconnect to ourselves. And you could call it your higher self or your divine self, infinite wisdom within you. Connecting back to that source, your intuition. This is the all-knowing aspect of ourselves that knows exactly what we should be doing in the world. And it has this plan to get us where we want to be. So connection, huge, huge, huge. So just a little bit of unpacking stuff that my guest Rachel Fabbi talked about on the episode. By the way, that was her first episode doing a podcast ever, and I thought she did phenomenal. She's a natural, and so look for more content coming from her to help you, be better in the world and untie those knots like she talked about. So a lot of goodness in that episode. She's very well spoken, has very great insights into helping us as human beings, kind of clean up what's going on inside and get our heads straight so we can do our work in the world. A lot of goodness in that episode. All right, well, I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of On The Go. Thanks so much. Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.